din sonze ma sondro roma tan deva rakita songe ni korba ni rom zumi zoba mo lo thaye ji lo lo de de dumne che bo ji ba gelen ba Om 过呢，做些用个过个不过靠什么吧，有个劲儿不等的，这拉巴拉他会上去一拿没把他就分没西当军的，我养大你不是。拉摩安杰摩埃，拉摩安杰摩埃，拉摩安杰摩埃，人杰王法贝瓦拉摩安杰摩埃，这个萨杰杰摩，龙波当杰杰卓内，阿波杰杰玛嘎，萨维欧玛杰杰诺，萨来图杰耶贝杰亚，木德南尼杰卓内。看来这如果做不了，做不了我们的天路。我们个百年过节，我这去过的在这，我人过就那的钱都不要钱。我们今天要是完成了三龙的这些，周总啊，这里的天看中国总的都我们的满城的情我呀的好的这些，也的家里。我们一起国家一起来看做的这种的这些，对的当初就是做了他的东西，全部当做刚才记得我们讲宗教一些方的这些，大就是
弘法后，现在播放的是法相仁波切亲自唱诵的《了呼上师祈请文》。今天我们准备是完全敬语。场内是完全敬语。那么中午我们为了法相仁波切，为了利益所有的弟子，那今年也有非常珍贵的所爱仁波切、法相仁波切，还有我们达尔寺的首座仁波切、法相仁波切Drubchö已经闭关3次，3年3个月的Drubchö那么这么尊贵的仁波切上师们莅临我们台湾。所以法相仁波切希望能够利益我们台湾的弟子。今天开始，中午1点到1点40分，那么4位会到台上，那么大家可以在下面就是集合，然后可以向他们做请益，无论是修法或者修持上的问题，或者生命，或者是尤其我们特别介绍法相仁波切在手印，以及法相仁波切说法相仁波切在手印以及法本仪轨的修持之间是非常非常的殊胜的，所以可以跟他相请教。那么如果有想进行闭关的，可以向我们Drubchö就是闭了10几年关的在达尔寺的闭关指导上师Drubchö做请益。那么这个时间呢是在1点到1点40分。
because it's not the common ceremony, it's his divinity. It's already
I think we all have some maybe a little bit distance from this.
we have beginning.
Earphone.
碍解脱与变执者为主之，别虚空入目众生具足一切乐，远离一切苦，速得真清净圆满珍贵无上菩提。愿一切对我嗔怒之怨敌，损恼之魔鬼，其障碍解脱与变执者为主之，遍虚空入目众生具足一切乐，远离一切苦，速得真清净圆满珍贵无上菩提。
生之梦者。
有 而不落至名为主于美，此须全部徒增烦恼因，所行全部行具不善果，结果知道少分不能及，常识之业归心所不是，而知从根断除其家事，常为常经一生心不起，常除恶因一切高非假，虽见过小不生非明心，世间现见却当彼此解，常识之业归心所不是，心须全然不化其家事，若为没有利益却观众，因是其而不舍相外求，所需所学所求却于我，不是去往快教有尽心，常识之业归心所不是，心能洞察此事其价值，真心同不丝毫亦难有，只想恶道无参其貌事，因果不生心见无世界，善心不修而觉如初见，常识之业归心所不是，顺其相信别为其家事，于你诚心于尽大心境，诸于智者于智如安宁，如法心事出现不沉睡，非法心事恩心亦有名，常识之业归心所不是，烦恼给我常为其家事，所从来观清净不独相，爱业自心与法不相符，有如有舍烦恼藏于腹，一边相与国土作装饰，常识之业归心所不是，自己大不自行其家事，其过而行自己不相长，知否同相之心诸非道，烦恼不善之业传心灵，善心一生只有如鱼感，常识之业归心所不是，自己观见其过其家事，改变过去此往渐渐进，别人当今心去跟着好，要做善事心 时时口念随发想，常时全业归心出不时，只受文法正念起家时，往昔恶业不着恶事生，创造一切前传更不已，各有诸种最高一比照，无因缘缘善心随发想，常时全业归心出不时，正法内入心随起家时，还是心思回到无其他，最后结果轮回而去矣。解脱庄稼本善双修海，跟着罪过混沌中有我，常时全业归心出不时，正法究竟去入其家时，愿力心地善心其家时，空下思绪间断其家时，死亡心中必尽其家时，真心相信愿力其家时，道上没有障碍其家时，修行全力精进其家时，恶缘因为道用其家时，对治能力自助其家时，如教心性舍弃其家时，知道本来灭我其家时，思念心中心我其家时，幻想根基断除其家时，意识提升成佛其家时。
So today, my Dharma friends, actually we are very fortunate to have this opportunity to recite this prayer and for me to introduce this prayer to you. And actually this prayer is something that I'm practicing myself on an ongoing basis as a prayer. And also it's very auspicious today because it is actually a special day. It's a teacher's day, like kind of a special day. And so in this world we only have really two traditions, and I always mention that to you. They both are extremely precious, and so for those who do not have much learning, it is most important for us to just know we need to cultivate love for our parents, our teachers, and our country, so that a real feeling arises and we really connect to them with body, speech and mind. So it's a very precious opportunity today, because it also happens to be the Teachers' Day, like kind of International Teachers' Day. And so this prayer of calling or crying for the Guru from afar is actually very precious, and many of the great masters and scholars treat it as something very, very significant. And it's really practiced throughout the four major lineages of Tibetan Buddhism, of Sakya, Gelugpa, Nyingma, Kagyu, and so on. And then within those lineages we have subdivisions, and we practice according to the practice and blessing lineage. And so then within that category, then we have many different lineages. Again, we speak about the 8 chariots, like kind of 8 wheels or chariots, that are different lineages, 8 major lineages basically. And actually it's very significant to give it this name, to term it a chariot or something with a wheel, because that is also related to the turning of the Dharma wheel. So it's a very fitting example actually. And so now of the different practices, we consider the practice of the Guru as very significant. The Guru is most precious really. And so here in this text there is a collection of different names of various gurus mentioned for this reason. And so then, as one, of course, engages in one's own practice, then there is a great variety of different gurus that might also appear. So it's important to apply it also to this practice. So this practice is really practiced in all the different lineages, in brief. And it is very important because it shows the significance of the teacher, who shows us really the ultimate meaning of the Dharma. And now in this time and age, in this aeon, the Dharma was taught by the Buddha Shakyamuni, and then many paths have emerged and so forth. And this particular one, this practice here, is also a path that we engage in practice. And however many approaches and paths there may be, we ultimately arrive at the same destination. All have the same goal, and that is to realize the twofold truth, and ultimately to realize the actual ultimate truth. That is to realize that all these phenomena that appear in this dualistic manner are actually inseparable. So that is really to be realized on the ultimate level. And so therefore we speak of the non-dual ultimate truth. And that is resolved or understood through practices we use like Mahamudra or Dzogchen or the Madhyamaka. And so all of these are different approaches or paths to reach this goal. And so similarly also this practice of crying for or calling for the Guru from afar constitutes such a path that leads to this ultimate resolution or understanding. So then, now coming to the text of crying to the gurus from afar. So, first of all, this term guru itself, it's first of all important that we really understand the significance, and that the guru's essence is in the nature of all the Buddhas of the three times. So the text begins in this way. Guru, think of me, kind root Guru, think of me, essence of the Buddhas of the three times. It refers to the Guru from whom we have first of all received the refuge vow. And we need to understand that all the Gurus are complete within that Guru. And then there's all sorts of Gurus, teachers that appear. And we have different views about them. And so, however, in whichever way they appear as human beings and have to act in accordance with human beings. So this is how it just appears on the outer level. But then their mind stream, the qualities contained within their minds are different. And so how we should see the Guru is his physical form as the embodiment of all the Sangha of the 3 times. And his speech, the embodying the holy Dharma of the 3 times, which comprises the twofold truth. And his mind to be a mind of the 4 immeasurables, states of mind. And so this is something we need to first develop a full trust in. And if you trust in these qualities, your mind will open up. And it is actually very important to really see the qualities of the Guru. That's kind of a prerequisite. Because when you see the qualities of the Guru, then these qualities will also arise within your own mind. So we should see the Guru as the embodiment of the 3 jewels of the 3 times. And according to the practice of secret mantra, the path, the Guru embodies the 3 roots. And on the fruition, the result, the Guru also embodies the 3 kayas. So he is together the embodiment of the 9 jewels. And so if you again and again look at the positive qualities of the Guru, then a very special, immeasurable, like limitless devotion and faith in that Guru will arise within your mind. And then when that arises, then the qualities of the Guru will also enter or arise within your own mind stream. And so first, I'm generally speaking, we In this path, the training in a pure perception, a pure view is most important. And so that also regards how we view any guru, any teacher. And so there are those individuals, those masters who are upholding the teachings, who are upholding them, increasing them, and propagating the teachings. And so from that perspective, then there seems to be some disagreement of each pointing out each other's faults and qualities and so on. But this is actually, this kind of debating is actually a necessary activity which actually refines one's understanding of the Dharma, and it is necessary in order to uphold the teachings. But then how we should approach it as practitioners is that we should not actually look at faults and qualities in this way, but rather only look at the positive and good qualities. So there's a slight difference between those masters who uphold the lineage and then us as the practitioners. So those masters who uphold the lineage, they need to engage in these activities of like trying to find a fault and then eliminating it and so on. So there's masters such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama and so on. But then for us as practitioners, if we would follow that and do that and look at the faults and so on, then since we view everything with eyes of afflictions, all we would see really is a lot of faults, and we wouldn't be able to see a lot of good qualities. So there was one thing said by a great master, a Yamantaka practitioner, Gelong Yangpa Rinpoche, and actually he was quite accomplished, just like a Buddha really, and it is said that from his heart the entire mandala of Yamantaka appeared. There's also a picture of that. And so he anyway said that regarding his own guru, that he said that in this world there is actually no higher, no greater spiritual master, no greater teacher than him. But then from a worldly, mundane perspective of the tradition of humans, there is no one worse in this world than him. So there's no one who behaves worse than him. So this is kind of also how a great master would see things. So for some there seems to be a little bit of a kind of a dissonance or a disagreement, a separation between the mundane and the Dharma, and for some it is the same. But in any case, from our perspective, it is very important that we only look at the good qualities of our spiritual teachers. And so that also was taught by Sakya Pandita, who said that those individuals who are with afflicted minds, they can only see the faults in others, which is just like kind of like salty water. So how we should rather approach it is only seeing their good qualities, only looking at their good qualities and holding on to these, thinking that all are good. Because, for example, even between friends, if you only look at their faults, then eventually you will separate from them. If you look at their good qualities, then that love will eventually transform into bodhicitta. So from the perspective of a practitioner, for us it is most important to develop a pure perception, especially towards the teachers. And so in the text also it mentions in the beginning that we visualize the guru above our crown. The guru sits above the crown. And of all the gurus, it refers to the root guru, within whom all the gurus are complete. They are complete because they really are all the same. What they say, what they speak is the same. What they do is the same. Their bodhicitta is the same. So we visualize the Guru above our crown, since we all possess Buddha nature. But And so until we have realized our own Buddha nature, however, we visualize the Guru above our crown, and then eventually, when the ice block of our mind has melted, then through the hot water, which is the Guru, we merge indivisibly with the Guru, and we then encounter the Dharmakaya, which is the true nature of our mind, as it says here in the text. And so always remember the good qualities of the Guru, and in this way you listen to the instructions. And so today there is the Teacher's Day in this world, and actually initially the Buddha Dharma had spread in India, in China, and in Tibet. And it is also here an homage to different Gurus, because it is said that the Lord of or the Buddha of India was Vajrapani, and of Tibet it was Chinrezig, and of China it was Manjushri. And there's many stories actually how great Mahasiddhas of these particular Buddhas have appeared in those places, like emanations of these Buddhas have appeared in those places. For example, the Dharma kings, also in China. So, for example, in China, for example, there's this great leader, Kongzi, who was also said to be actually an emanation of Manjushri. And so then we go through the different lineage gurus who represent these Buddhas, and then we skip to page 4, the English text, in the third verse, and that begins with, "Alas, sentient beings like myself, evildoers with bad karma, have wandered in samsara from beginningless time." Since beginningless time, we have wandered in samsara, and even now we experience endless suffering and do not feel any sadness for even an instant. it is first that this wandering in samsara since beginningless time is we have not realized that the workings of karma, cause and effect. Even if we have disregarded it, we have not considered it, we have not really believed in it. And as a result of that, in this world there is so much suffering, such as warfare, misery, and so on. The suffering of the four elements of earth, water, fire, wind. And all of that is created by our evil karma, our misdeeds that we have accumulated with an afflicted mind of the three poisons that have compelled us to engage in the 10 non-virtuous actions. And now we have entered the gates of the Dharma, we have taken the refuge vow, and we have understood the workings of karma. We have understood that all suffering arises from evil actions that we ourselves have engaged in. And when we see that happening around us, we must also recognize that these afflictive emotions that cause these kinds of sufferings are actually present within our own mind stream. And so for this reason we are still wandering in samsara, and we have been wandering in samsara since beginningless time, taking on bodies one after the other, life after life. And so when you see the suffering of others, cultivate compassion, and then also recognize the cause that led to this particular suffering. And then recognizing the cause, the affliction, also recognize that this affliction actually is also present within my own mind, and it will lead to that kind of suffering. So not only have we wandered in samsara since beginningless time, we still have not purified our self-grasping and afflictions, and for this reason, since they are still present within our mind, we are bound to continue to experience endless suffering. So for example, recognize anger, hatred is present within my mind. It will lead to a certain result, as I can see in this world, warfare and misery and so on. So when you see the suffering in others, you cultivate compassion, and you recognize the cause, the afflictive emotion that caused that within yourself. And so then it continues in the text. Guru, think of me, look upon me quickly with compassion, grant your blessings, so I give rise to renunciation from the depths. So this term, giving rise to renunciation, what does that actually refer to? So when you think about any kind of suffering that we experience, there's a great variety, and yet there's not a single kind of suffering that does not arise from the 6 afflictive emotions. And there's not a single affliction that doesn't arise from self-grasping. Everything arises from self-grasping. For example, if someone says something negative to you, you get angry immediately. So you think that he said that to me. So the self backs up or supports the afflictive emotion. So do not think about the other person at all, and only recognize what's really significant is the altruistic mind. It is to cultivate love and to recognize that this selfish state of mind is just leads to a great heap of faults. So thinking in this way, recognize that this is the wrong that I need to eliminate, is constant thinking of me, me, me. That is the real mistake. That's the real fault that I have to get rid of. And what is truly precious is the altruistic mind, a mind of loving kindness. Only if you liberate yourself from self-grasping will you become liberated from samsara. If you do not free yourself from self-grasping, you will also never become liberated from samsara. So viewing it with the eyes of wisdom, discriminating wisdom, you will be able to see the fault of the afflictive emotion. And this seeing, this knowing is actually the compassionate blessing of the Guru that we are requesting here, these blessings that we are requesting here. So that's the essential meaning of these words. So this is how we should understand this term, renunciation. That is, it means to know that what I need to eliminate is self-grasping. And this knowledge that is determined to eliminate self-grasping, then that is what we call renunciation. So it would be good to understand it in this way.
Dharma
Then it says, although I have obtained a free and well-favored human birth, I have wasted it in vain. I'm constantly distracted by the activities of this futile life. So I've found a precious human body, and having found a precious human body, not only engaging in the activities of this life. Of course, we do have to engage in the activities of this life, and no one can be just like Milarepa and giving up everything entirely. So with our bodies, we do engage in our mundane activities, but the mind and how we view things makes all the difference. With our mind, we must understand that if I allow the afflictions, self-grasping to remain within my mind continues to remain in an ice block-like state. And until that is melted, I will continue to wander around in samsara. And so regarding these activities of this life, we have to really think about how futile, how meaningful are they really? What is really the benefit of engaging in all these activities ultimately? Everything that we do just to cherish our physical comfort, our bodies, what's the real benefit of that? Because later when we die, all that we will take with us are the habitual imprints, the tendencies in our mind. That will go with us, but nothing else will. There's not a single thing you can bring with you. So if you then think about and consider karma, you think about the significance of practices like generosity and ethical discipline and patience and so on, and then recognize that it's more important to think about future lifetimes. So actually there is no real difference between the mundane activities and Dharma practice. Whatever you do, what's most important, what you need to bring with you is the altruistic mind. Like in the 37 practices, in verse number 36, it says that, in brief, whatever you do, you should look at your mind. So instantly bring that to mind and think about here, this endless wandering in circles in samsara, and how it is when you will never become liberated. There will be great hardships uninterruptedly, and that is only due to having engaged in all of these futile activities of this life. So when we think about the activities that you engage in, some are meaningful, some are less meaningful. And of course, it is also sometimes fine to engage in meaningless activities, but what's more important actually is how we see it in our mind, what we think in our mind. And if you look at your mind and you really only think about this life, then see the futility in that. Really, you should look at your mind over and over again and see what kind of state of mind arises within you. And if you only think about this life, even on the outer level, if you practice virtue, if you only do it for this life, some people might get rich, for example, in future lives, but then eventually this merit will come to an end. On the other hand, if you think about the benefit of all sentient beings, then even if you just practice a small virtue, the result will be great. And that is actually a skillful means given by the Buddha. So that means even though you do engage in mundane activities that seem to be meaningless, they do not have to become meaningless. They can become meaningful if you apply that skillful means of cultivating the altruistic mind. And so in brief, if you never separate from that, from loving kindness and compassion, then in whatever you do, you never really separate from liberation. And then on the other hand, if you only think about yourself, you have cut yourself off from liberation. So here it mentions this jewels. I return empty-handed from a land of jewels. So this jewel, now you have found a precious human body. And having found this body, you have to find the jewel, the meaning of this life. And what's the jewel of all the Buddhas of the 3 times? They called it the precious bodhicitta. And that is what all the Buddhas of the past, the present, and the future have taught. And nobody really taught anything else. And even though we have different spiritual, religious traditions in this world and different approaches, there's no one who doesn't talk about loving kindness and compassion, just to different degrees and levels. But in essence, it's the same. And so when you die, this is the quality that you want to bring with you, that jewel that you have to find in this lifetime. And if you do not find this jewel in this lifetime, then it says this human birth will become empty. Then, although you have found the precious human body, it will become meaningless, or it has become empty of any meaning. And then you will continue to wander around as an ice block floating in the ocean and continue to experience difficulties. So therefore, it says, I return empty-handed from a land of jewels. Guru, think of me, look upon me quickly with compassion, and grant your blessings so that my human birth is meaningful. So it says, Guru, think of me, look upon me quickly with compassion, grant your blessings so that my human birth is meaningful. That a human birth becomes meaningful. In order for the human birth to become meaningful, ideally, in the best case, one enters any of the 3 levels of the path of individual liberation, bodhisattvas, and the Vajrayana path. And having completed these paths, you attain the perfection for your own benefit, and then for the benefit of others, you appear to act for their purpose. There's many great beings like that. But even if you are not able to accomplish this in this lifetime, for example, you might feel that you don't have the opportunity to practice in such a way in this lifetime, then you should think that later I'm going to die, and when I die, what will arise within my mind. It would be better if I am able to let go of my attachment to those beings near me, loved ones, and my aversion against those enemies and so forth, and recognize that all sentient beings, without exception, have been my parents. And then you can bring to mind whoever you love in this life, and then think that everyone has been just like that. For example, if you love your mother, then you think that everyone has been my mother. And that's also one method by the Buddha to introduce us to the workings of karma. So you practice this until you really have a feeling of everyone, every being to be like a family member. And so then when you consider what would be the state of my mind if I would die now, then if you feel that I want everyone in this world to be happy, then you can actually say that this human existence has become meaningful. And so then how did you know all of that? How did you know that the workings of karma? How did you know about the faults of negative actions and the benefits of positive actions? You know all of this from the spiritual teacher. Without the spiritual teacher, you wouldn't know any of that. And so there is no one who doesn't first of all consider themselves as most important. But then we realize the fault in that, and we realize the quality in altruism. And we know that from our spiritual teacher. So it is the teacher's kindness. So you remember the kindness of others in this way. Or you just think about your mother and so on. And if you love your mother, I think everyone has been my mother. And so anyways, if you and then you think about who told me that I have to think that everyone has been my mother, it also was the spiritual teacher. So then a very special feeling arises, and you feel like, my goodness, it's really all my teacher. It's all his kindness. And then remembering that, if you just recite one Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, thinking of the benefit of all beings in this world, then actually this mind will pervade all the beings in this world. Or even if you can't do that, even if you think, I practice so I don't have to go to hell, and you recite Om Mani Padme Hum, then at least there will be some benefit to that extent. So remember the kindness in this way and develop a sense of gratitude for the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, the three jewels, by remembering the qualities of the Guru. So even if you're not able to practice anything at all, So even if you can't practice anything else at all, if you just have this state of mind that wishes for the benefit of all, happiness of all, then you can actually feel confident in dying at any time. So then you just bring to mind Amitabha and the Pure Land of Drubchö, and then you can actually be born there. And then you can actually say that this life has become meaningful. So then in the next it says, there is no one on earth who will not die. Even now, one after another, they pass away. I also will die very soon, yet like an idiot, I prepare to live for a long time. So that verse is really quite easy to understand. But then how do we really apply that to ourselves? So this is actually a state of, we all know that to some extent, but mostly we cannot really develop this state of mind within ourselves. A sign of this is that there's many people who are very old already, in their 80s and 90s, and they still try to stay for a long time, and they still make themselves take all kinds of medical treatments and different kind of supports for walking and so forth, and they still don't they want to hold on to this life, and they still prepare to never die. So then you really have to think about what's the benefit of that. And ultimately it's up to karma when you're going to die. For example, even a king who is protected can be assassinated. On the other hand, there is some who have survived both world wars and still are alive and talking to people. So just make up your mind that it's all determined by karma. There's no one in this world who doesn't have to die. And so it is therefore better to prepare for death and for future lives than to make all kinds of efforts to remain for a long time. It is actually said, if you remember death, if that is obviously present in your mind, first of all, it becomes an encouragement for you to enter the Dharma. And in the middle, it becomes your encouragement, your support to practice the Dharma. And also, it helps you to understand that all suffering, all illness and so on has its root in the afflictions, which have their root in self-grasping. So bring to mind the suffering of all sentient beings and recognize the root cause of all that suffering to be self-grasping. And then think that may my suffering relieve the suffering of all other sentient beings. And so if you are able to think in this way, then that's excellent, but if not, you can also learn to accept and tolerate whatever suffering you encounter and see it more as a support to your practice. For example, if you have a very bad illness, often you need to undergo surgery, so suffering is just like that. So think that there is no one in this world who doesn't have to die, and even if I have to die, I'm purifying my negative karma. So remembering death really is your support to practice the Dharma. So remember it throughout the 3 times of day and 3 times of the night, and at all times prepare yourself for death. Recite the Mani mantra, Mani Padme Hum mantra, or Amitabha mantra, bring to mind Chinrizik. And so no matter how old you are at this point, there is no certainty when you're going to die. You don't know, will I die tomorrow or not? So again and again remember death, and people don't like to do that because they are afraid of thinking about that. But then what's the benefit of that? There is really no benefit in trying to hold on to life and trying to avoid death. We all need to die. So that being the truth, we need to better make a preparation. and develop a mind that wants to prepare for that when that happens. And then death really becomes your support in your practice. And actually thinking in this way also helps you extend your lifespan. Actually, it is better for your health as well. And also for your mind, it becomes a support, a conducive factor, an encouragement for you to practice virtue. Those thoughts of thinking of I want to live for a long time, preparing to live for a long time, these are all confused states of mind. So then next it says, I will become separated from my lovers and friends, the wealth and food of which I have amassed, and greedily will be enjoyed by others. Even this body I hold so dear will be left behind. So this is actually a very important verse. So first it says, you're separating from your lovers and friends and so forth. Also what this reminds us of is that for the time that we all live in this world and have these friends and relatives and parents and so on, we will encounter all kinds of difficulties. Sometimes we argue and there are hardships that we go through, and often a kind of unbearable state of mind arises due to that. But then you can't help yourself and lash out on them and so on. But if you really think about it, we're all going to die. And then when that happens, when death approaches today, then everyone cries and feels sad. We don't know when this is going to happen. We don't know how long we are going to live, how long we are going to be together. So for the time that you do have together, get along and don't fight with each other. Because these are all beings that we accompany from lifetime to lifetime. They all have been our parents. And see them as your support to cultivate greater love and compassion. So if you think in this way and bring to mind the impermanence of this life and death, then it's very clear that we don't know when is the last time that we will meet each other, when it is time to really separate, when we're going to die. And if you think in this way, then you see them all as a support to cultivate love and compassion, a support to cultivate bodhicitta. So do not fight and argue, get angry with others. For example, there are some family situations where the parents are very old, and even before they die, the children already fight over their money, who gets what. And then parents, knowing that, will get angry about that, will upset them. And this anger actually is the very cause of hell. It's the only cause of hell. When that seed is within the mind, then a corresponding flower will blossom from it. So we have to be extremely careful about this and persist in cultivating love and compassion. So regarding these possessions and wealth and food and so on, for some people, for example, whatever they do, things just fall into place naturally and they are successful. And for others, no matter how hard they try, they never get what they want. And there are some people, for example, who are able to help people around the world. And there's other people who don't even find a dwelling place on their own, for themselves. So it's all due to karma. So you make up your mind, this is all decided by karma. Whatever I get it due to karma, naturally. There's no point in becoming attached. Whatever you are attached to, offer it up to the 3 jewels as a mandala offering. And cultivate compassion for all sentient beings, and think that I'm going to die, and before that happens I must use my wealth to benefit people in this world. Or you can mentally make offerings to the 3 jewels and so on. So if you don't do that, then this, as it says here, this body that you hold so dear will be left behind. So what this body really is according to the 37 practices, it is like a guest house, and consciousness, the guest, will cast aside the guest house of the body. These words are actually extremely profound. If you see this body as not yourself, as the me, but see it more like a temporary dwelling place, like a guest house, then your mind will become so much more lighter. And this fixation of thinking that I am this body and this cherishing of this body will become so much lighter. And you know that whatever happens comes down to karma. And seeing things in this way, also your experience of suffering will become lighter. And so then the consciousness will wander in an unfamiliar state in the bardo and so on. So therefore we ask the Guru to realize that I do not need anything at all. So it would be very good to think in this way.
Om
马后，等一下人不进入场，请不要起立，请不要起立。仁波切希望我们保持禅修打坐，避免自心更新以及持咒，所以请不要起立。志工请入座，志工请入座。入场请不要起立，请保持禅修打坐持咒，请不要起立。
Oh, God.
So the next in the text it says, even this body I hold so dear will be left behind. So we need to remember that this body that I cherish so much is not actually who I am. It's not me. We just call it this. But this term in Tibetan actually for body itself, lu actually it means body, but it also means something that you leave behind, something that you discard. So it's something that you will discard, and you will never really possess it. And so then, when it is left behind, the consciousness will wander in the unfamiliar, bardo and samsara. So now, while you're alive, you don't think much about karma. We don't consider it too much. We think that it's something for the future. There might be some karma in the future, but this is all beyond this life. When I'm not this body anymore, it's not really me, so we don't really feel much about it. And then we just do anything. We steal and engage in all kinds of negative actions, thinking that this is just something about the future. This doesn't really concern me actually, and it's too far away actually. But then the thing is that it is that consciousness that accumulates karma, and all the karmic imprints, the afflictions, they are stored within that consciousness. They stay there. For example, when somebody insults you and says something negative to you, then you get angry, and this like kind of wind energy this energy of anger, of rage arises, and then you say something back. And so this arising, this energy that arises within you, this anger, this is within that consciousness, and that will be taken with that consciousness. It's just that we don't know that. So then the consciousness have been wandering this unfamiliar bardo and samsara, and so we asked the Guru to grant blessings so that I realized that I need nothing at all. And so then when we wander in this unfamiliar state in the bardo, we have no control. There is a big difference between having freedom of mind or not being in control. And we can actually see signs of having control or having practice or not having it. When an afflictive emotion arises right now, if you have a freedom of mind, if you are in control, then even if an affliction arises, you instantly recognize it with clear awareness and you will not become controlled by it. So this is what we call you have attained freedom. Such a mind, a free mind, knows I must cultivate love and compassion. I must not become controlled by the afflictive emotions. And on the other hand, if whatever arises carries you away, whatever arises, you follow it and you act on it with body and speech, you accumulate karma driven by afflictions. And then whichever one is predominant in the bardo then will carry you to any of the 6 kinds of birth within samsara. So then requesting the Guru to grant blessings so that I realize I need nothing at all. So these blessings are, what that actually is your own mindfulness. And needing nothing at all here, it doesn't mean that we become an ascetic like Milarepa. That won't happen for us, but it means not to fall into both extremes of either self-mortification or self-indulgence, but to stay in between. It is fine to take care of your health and your body and to make a living, but the attitude should be where you think, whatever comes my way, I'm content. And all of these activities really have no essence in the end. And to know that this is not who I really am. This body is just like a guest house. So in this way, you use this body to engage in virtuous action. So you need this body too, so you don't want to fall into the extreme of self-mortification, and you will feel that I need this body, I will take care of this body well, so I can make best use of it in my practice of the Dharma of virtue. So this is how we think here when we ask the Guru for blessings, that we don't need anything at all. So then it says, the black darkness of destruction receives me. The next verse. So that is anyone who has not realized the view, the natural state of the mind, or recognized the nature of mind, gained insight into the nature of the mind, they are in a state of mental darkness, like a sleep-like state. For example, when you wake up from sleeping, immediately this concept of me, I arises, I have slept, and then you think about whatever you're going to do, and fall into this kind of neutral, indifferent state, and follow whatever arises within your mind. So everyone, those who have not realized the natural state of their mind, are in a state of delusory ignorance. Ignorance means that they do not know the true nature of their mind, the non-dual nature of their mind. And due to this ignorance, they fall into a state of delusion. And so now some people explain that there are three states of mind that we are in. Either it is virtuous, non-virtuous, or indifferent, or neutral. But actually, Lord Jigten Sumgön had said that there is actually no neutral or indifferent state, because what they call neutral or indifferent is actually a state of unmindfulness. And unmindfulness ultimately is ignorance, delusion. So really we only have either a virtuous or non-virtuous state of mind. And in this delusory state of ignorance, one is in a sleep-like state, or like an animal. An animal, for example, is the natural manifestation of ignorance. So the nature of ignorance is mental darkness. Also, once Milarepa gave a teaching to his student Bardabam. It's also found in the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa. And he said that in this lifetime, if you find yourself in a state of darkness, you should shine the lamp, become the lamp of the luminous lamp of awareness, of wisdom awareness. Habituate, so you become this luminous lamp of awareness in all future lifetimes. Otherwise, there's only darkness in this and future lives. So you become like a lamp, a luminous lamp, if you develop this awareness, clear awareness, mindfulness, and in this way attain freedom of whatever arises. So with clear awareness in this way, you will recognize the true nature of the mind naturally. And not recognizing it, you will remain in a state of darkness. And so then next it says this fierce red winds of karma. So this fierce or like a frightening state is actually, this term fearful is actually a very important term. And also the word worldly being, a world, derives from this word of fear in the Tibetan. It's means fear, and Jigdamba is a worldly person. So it means that as a worldly person, you are bound to fear and suffering. So we need to understand that everything compounded is impermanent and subject to disintegration. In the end, it will all collapse. Nothing really exists. Everything becomes empty. It is just that we hold on to a self that actually does not exist. And it is due to this sense of a me and I that fear arises. For example, in a dream, you have a fearful dream. For example, in a dream, you might find yourself in this state of darkness, lost and fearful, wondering if a robber, a criminal, or an evil person or a wild animal and so on comes along and harms you. So there's this constant fears of what if something happens, and what if this happens, what if that happens, this kind of state of mind. And this fearful state of mind is the activity of the self. So that's a very important thing to bear in mind. For example, there was a disciple, there's actually some disciples who practice Poa. They only practice Poa. And there once a question arose about that, and the person said that, so I practiced Poa, just a visualization, and then I found myself, I fell into this unconscious state, and suddenly I was in this state of darkness. Darkness and empty darkness appeared. And from that darkness, from this empty state, fear arose. And so this is actually a sign that for as long as, when fear arises out of this empty state, it is a sign that the self is still there. And for as long as the self is not eliminated, fear will never cease to be. Also, Jigten Sumgön had said, to me the preliminaries are more profound than the main part practices. And what are the preliminaries? The preliminaries really is the altruistic mind, this boundless mind of love and compassion. And if you do not train in that, then no matter what other path you practice, you will never really connect to the mind of bodhicitta, and therefore there will never be an end to fear. And so for as long as there is a self, there will be fear. And if you cultivate boundless love for all beings, then you just think about all sentient beings. You don't even think about yourself any longer. Or even in this world, you think that I want to benefit the people in this world. For example, people go to war as a soldier fearlessly in order to protect their country. So a fearlessness comes from the altruistic mind in whatever you do. So in this way, you become like a hero. A bodhisattva also is called a hero, somebody who is fearless. Otherwise, if you do not think about others, fear will never cease to be. So a sign, when fear is present, that's a clear sign of self-grasping being present. And so whatever practice you engage in, if you infuse it with bodhicitta, naturally you will become increasingly more fearless. A bodhisattva, as actually the term etymologically also implies, is it refers to a hero, a courageous person. A person with altruism is a fearless person. So that is what needs to be recognized when you read these lines here of a fearful or fierce and so on. Fear is related to the self, and so when that is present, we have to be very careful. And then it says, the fierce red winds of karma chase after me. Yama's hideous messages speed and hack me. So these winds of karma, the winds of karma refer to a state of mind that is not in a free state. You have no self-control. That means you have no mindfulness. And that means whatever affliction arises, you will become controlled by it. It will control you. So these are the karmic winds that actually control us at the present time too. So these afflictions control you and you accumulate karma. And whatever has been accumulated is stored in the mind, just like a picture being taken, and it will later in the bardo, after you have died, manifest. The picture that has been taken will manifest. So whatever karma has been accumulated will manifest. And so then these hideous messengers of Yama, who are they really? Now in this life, whatever karma you have accumulated, such as having killed others and stolen from others and abused others and beat others and so on, whatever karma you have committed in this life is stored in the mind, just like a TV show or like a film that is stored in your mind. And this film will become projected in the bardo. So whatever you have done now, such as deceiving others and so on, will come back as a natural self-projection in the bardo. And then whatever is in the mind will appear. For example, when you think that there might be a robber, then he already appears. Or there might be again a weapon or like an arrow, then already it appears. The moment you think of it in the bardo, because you already have taken that picture before, have placed it into your mind. And that is that messenger of Yama. There is no other messenger. So it's the self-grasping that naturally projects in the bardo. It is the result arising from the cause. then karma and the afflictive emotions that have caused that karma become inseparable in the bardo, and then are projected just like the film, like a TV show. To give one small example, for example, when I was very young, when I was a little child, there was this bug, kind of like a termite that lives in the, it stays in the, in the wood, in the furniture, and so on. I was very much afraid of that insect, and I was always afraid I'm going to see this insect. And then actually there was once a time where nobody was looking, and I killed the insect. And so then that kind of placed an imprint in my mind, and then I had these dreams of wherever I go, there's this insect. They're all over the place, everywhere in all dreams. Here they are, those insects. And so that's made me really think that this is 100% a sign of karma. This is how karma works. This is what these habitual tendencies are. This is. And so at this point, I really knew that this is what we call like a negative karma, things that are stored within the mind. And so then next it says, do I have to experience the unbearable suffering of the lower realms? So this unbearable suffering of the lower realms is all the natural manifestation, the self-projection of one's own mind. So whatever karma is committed is bound to be projected. We have to experience their results. And however, at that time in the bardo, the experience of karmic ripening, of suffering, is intensified, much more intense than it is now. For example, if you have some fire, you increase its heat by like 70 times or so, so it becomes really unbearably hot. But then again, it disappears instantaneously. And so at that time, Guru, think of me, look upon me quickly with compassion, grant your blessing so that I free myself from the chasms of the lower realms. So here at this time, who is the Lama, the Guru? I free myself from the chasms of the lower realms, it says. So what happens here, how you free yourself, is that you remember the Guru and the teachings of karma, of bodhicitta. If you're able to remember the Guru or the Yidam at that time of suffering, then these imprints will arise. The imprint of the Guru and of the teachings will arise, the Yidam. And in this way, one imprint destroys another imprint. And so that is what we call the compassionate blessings of the Guru, or So it is. These are the compassionate blessings of the Guru, and also there's an interdependent connection here. There's like an auspicious connection here, because there's two imprints cannot arise at the same time. So one defeats the other. So then next it says, my faults are as large as a mountain, but I conceal them within me. Others' faults are as minute as a sesame seed, but I proclaim and condemn them. So these words here are actually very, very important in whatever you do in the world or in the Dharma. We always look at the faults of others, and no one ever looks at their own faults at all. Unless one is someone who really possesses clear awareness. But according to the Buddhist tradition, it is said that when you look at the faults of others, when you see the faults in others, then instantly you should look at your own mind and see that same fault within yourself. For example, people criticize others and think that, oh, he did that and that's really bad, what he did is really bad, really wrong. But then look at your mind, what's happening, what's actually in your own mind when you think in this way. Actually, there is a hidden flaw that you have. So basically, whatever bothers you in others is a fault that you yourself possess. So if you really think about it with 100% certainty, surely you will come to that conclusion. Whatever fault you see in others, you actually have that fault. And that's why you see it as a fault, because you have it, that fault as well. You have that affliction as well. So when you see the fault in others, recognize and that fault, that affliction is actually present within your own mind. If you only, mostly it is the case that the stronger people grasp at the sense of me, the self, the more they are able to see the faults of others, and then they only see the faults of others. Sakya Pandita had said that do not look at the faults. You should not look at the faults of others, and all you should see is their good qualities. And that is because also Lord Jigden Sumgön had said that all sentient beings in their mind stream by nature, because their nature is ultimately pure, they possess Buddha nature, they all possess love and compassion. So look at that quality and only see that quality. and even if they just have a good heart, at least a little bit, see that as a good quality. Focus on that good quality. If you see the good qualities of others, you yourself become completely liberated. So this was spoken by Chikden Sungan. And he said, if you look at the faults of others, you yourself become obscured. So if you look at the good qualities of others, joy arises, and a respect for others arises. And when you respect others, happiness arises, and your mind opens up. So do not look at the faults, but look at their good qualities. And then you become completely liberated, Chikden Somgun said. If you look at the faults of others, then instantly recognize that fault within yourself. And such recognition, actually, such awareness is the greatest benefit for yourself and also others. It says, we have the slightest capability, but we call ourselves practitioners and so forth, but really we find ourselves in this. You look at your own mind, and what really happens is when we look at the faults of others is that actually we are criticizing others for precisely those things, those faults that we ourselves possess. If we wouldn't possess those faults, it wouldn't occur to us to criticize them for these faults. And so therefore recognizing that with awareness will be, for this reason, the greatest benefit for yourself and also others. So with awareness, hold a view that equalizes self with others. And so then next it says, though I haven't the slightest capabilities, I boast about how good I am. I call myself a Dharma person and practice only non-Dharma. And so now we have found the precious human body, and so then that quality of a practitioner that we need to acquire, what is that actually? So the quality to acquire in the Dharma is should be understood as love and compassion. And if you have love and compassion, you will naturally benefit yourself and bring happiness to others. Or it will lead to a temporary benefit and ultimate happiness. So that which leads to that is what we call a good quality. And now there are some Dharma practitioners, even though they practice the Dharma, all they do really is look at the faults of others and criticize others. And that is because when you look at their mind, they do that because their love and their compassion, their awareness are too weak, too small. They are completely controlled by ignorance. And ignorance leads to pride. So it says, grant your blessings that I subdue my selfishness and pride. So pride and ignorance actually are equivalent. And so as a Dharma practitioner, being a Dharma person, what we really need to practice, whatever it is, people criticize whoever, their gurus, the spiritual teachers, or anybody else. They express their faults. For example, if you criticize a teacher, a spiritual teacher who teaches the Dharma, actually, no matter what he really does in his personal life, no matter who he is, when he teaches the Dharma, he teaches karma. He teaches about the benefits of virtue and the faults of non-virtue. And if he wouldn't do that, he couldn't wear the red robes. And there's many people who develop faith and devotion in that and who attain freedom, liberation from his teachings. And then if you come to criticize them, you might undermine all of these activities. And actually the greater the activities of that master, the more destructive the deed. For example, it's like if you have a very large river, you need a very large bridge to cross it. So if you demolish the bridge, then nobody can travel across the bridge any longer. And the fault is on your part. So there's many people in this world who are prideful in this way, and they do not really understand karma and think that I know it much better. I know what's really going on. Or my teacher is much more precious, and so on. And then they get jealous and angry at others and undermine their activities. And the more vast the activity that is undermined, the greater the harm that is being caused. And that harm ultimately comes back to oneself. So actually, you cannot really destroy a great master's activities because his activities have been sealed by a pure dedication of bodhicitta. So you're really undermining yourself by doing that. So if one doesn't believe in karma and trust in bodhicitta, no matter what you do, whether it's a Dharma activity or worldly activity, it will become non-Dharmic. So non-Dharmic, what that really means is that whatever you do or basically what does it mean to be dharmic? According to the Dharma, even if you engage in mundane activities, whatever you do that brings benefit to yourself and happiness to others, any activity, for example, you go to work, you get a salary and you follow the rules. Of course, you can have a profit also yourself, but your intention is positive. It depends on how you think about it. And if the intention is positive, then temporarily there will be a benefit, and ultimately it will lead to happiness for self and others. So basically, in brief, what makes an activity dharmic, according to the Dharma, is when you consider the well-being of others as more important. If you hold the view of equalizing self and others. For example, you do anything to benefit your country or the people around you, then your activities become Dharma activities. And if you only think about your own benefit, your own profit, then you will always encounter difficulties. So now we supplicate to please grant blessings that I subdue this selfishness and pride. So if that selfishness and pride is present in the mind, then everything becomes non-dharmic. And if compassion and so on arise, then even mundane worldly activities become true Dharma activities. Therefore, we request, grant me blessings to recognize this, that I do not fall onto the corrupt path, and protect me from the corrupt path of selfishness and pride. So actually selfishness and pride are really interrelated, or in other words, ignorance and pride are interrelated. Pride really belongs to this category of ignorance. They have the same essence. The nature of pride is being ignorant, and the nature of ignorance is pride. So this is grant your blessings that I subdue my selfishness and pride. So regarding this mind of pride, pride is not something, this huge solid thing that suddenly pops up, but actually it begins on a very subtle level, and we accumulate very small moments of pride, and then they turn into something huge. It happens, for example, in a worldly context all the time between two companions. For example, if there's a couple and one always thinks, I'm doing all the work all the time, and then you think that once, and then you think it again, and then you keep thinking about it over and over again. I'm doing everything. I'm the one who's doing everything. He's doing nothing. I'm doing everything. Eventually, your mind gets tired, and you feel that I did all of this work, everything I did. I'm so tired. And in this way, actually, you're losing your inner mental strength, and then you think that my companion, he doesn't do anything, I'm doing everything, and in the end you will finally say something and you end up fighting. So as a practitioner, how you should see it is that, yes, I'm doing all the things, and I should, because I have to cultivate my bodhicitta. I have to benefit others. This is my chance to benefit. I need to develop greater love, greater kindness, greater bodhicitta. I need to benefit my companion. Everything I do actually becomes my practice. I must care for my parents, for example, or whoever else in your family. Actually, that's ultimately to my own greatest advantage. So then, no matter how much you have to do, you would always feel that this is exactly what I have to do. Now my intention is accomplished. This accomplishes my practice, and you wouldn't have any pride about it at all. So also Sakya Pandita had said that if one's qualities are too small, one's pride increases. Actually, so the increasing of pride is a sign of inferior qualities. And such a person never really thinks about karma or bodhicitta, only thinks about me all the time. That arises, this I. And that leads to pride just naturally. This constant grasping at the sense of I, me. So that is something, my Dharma friends, I really ask you to look into in all your daily activities. Observe how that arises in your own mind. It's very important to remember this, because there will be a great benefit if you do, because this is where ultimate practice comes in. So with regard to anyone, whether it's your family member or your friends or your Vajra brothers and siblings, or amongst the monastery with the monks and so on, wherever you are, when pride arises, actually that is a sign of inferior qualities. So let go of that, so qualities can arise. That which destroys all of your good qualities is this sense of me and this pride, because it leads to other. So because if this pride arises, then also other afflictions like jealousy will arise, and then it's not so small and insignificant any longer. And so now, actually, this also happens quite a bit when we practice the Dharma in Dharma practice. For example, people take pride in their accomplishments. Some people say that, for example, I have accumulated 1 million of these mantras. And then some say that even though I have accumulated all these mantras, I didn't have any feeling, any experience at all. So I might as well not accumulate any mantra anymore. But then if you really think about it, what happened at your mind while you accumulated all these mantras is that while you accumulate the mantra, you're supposed to not separate from the clear vision of the deity. We are supposed to gather together, bring together into one, concentrate a body, speech, and mind into one. It's not just about verbal recitation or lip service. It's mainly about infusing the mind with bodhicitta single-pointedly. We need to bring together, focus body, speech, and mind. If you only do the mantra recitation and your mind is elsewhere, then of course the recitation in itself is not without benefit, but then in this lifetime likely no signs of accomplishment of the generation stage deity yoga will arise. When you it is something that you can see when you engage in practice. It is not that there is no blessing in the practice. It is not that there is no efficiency in the practice. It's not that it's not effective, but it's the way in which we practice it. The way in which we practice it must be single-pointed on the basis of bodhicitta. And if that is not the case, and we just recite some mantra, then we cannot expect any signs to appear in this life. But still, after several lifetimes, signs will arise. For example, when we receive an empowerment, even if you're not able to do this practice at all in your entire life, it is said in a text explaining the benefits of empowerment that after 7 lifetimes the benefits of this empowerment will come to fruition. And so that is why I always encourage disciples to receive many empowerments, as many as you can. There's nothing wrong with doing that. What is really the essence of it is that you sustain a mind of bodhicitta.